All right, let's get this party started. Things seem to be all right, and if you watched the last stream, you were probably as disturbed as I was to discover that apparently I accidentally changed the resolution of my own monitor to not 1920 by 1080, but 1920 by something slightly bigger than 1080. And as a result of that, this part of the screen was cut off. It appears to not be cut off now. I have added a new item to my pre-flight checklist for the stream to make sure that doesn't happen again. That was mind-bogglingly irritating. I'm going to go over here and pause up the old live stream output window that is confusing and disorienting me because I can see what I'm doing on that slight delay, and it's time to get the party started as it will. Hello, fellow Sublime Text Fanatics. OdatNurd here, back with another Wednesday night uh, live stream on package development in Sublime Text, and I'm working on my help package once again. Now, normally when I do these streams, I don't have a quote unquote plan for exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it in detail in a way where I'm pretty sure or even vaguely sure it's going to work. But what I do, and I mentioned this in the last one, and I said do, is while I'm walking around on my morning walks and taking the dog for his walks and whatnot, my brain inevitably ponders the things that I'm thinking of working on and starts unwrapping the puzzles of how something should work or how something could work or things of that nature. And as a result, I usually have a pretty good idea going in what it is that I want to do and how I'm going to try and pull it off. But today I was unable to do that because it was the first day of a little mini vacation, and I spent the day at Circle Craft, walking around, looking at crafted items, going out to dinner, doing all kinds of things, and not actually really having any time to think about this whatsoever. So this could be even more exciting than usual. I do have a few things that I'd like to look into doing something with. Set up my console on the right hand monitor. Before we begin, let's go ahead and press this key, which hopefully still plays the introduction. Well, that looked good. And let me also point out that I have two channels. This channel, my OdatNurd channel. Subscribe to this one if you want to see live streams like this and the archives thereof. Subscribe to my other channel, the OdatNurd channel, which is also Sublime Text related, but the videos on there are edited and pre-planned and tutorial-like in nature. Link down in the description. Use the uh, subscribe button to subscribe. Use the notification, quote unquote, ring the bell to be notified when live streams are about to happen or when new videos have dropped. Have questions on something in one of my packages, one of your packages, something about package development that's always confused you, questions on anything in particular. Find a video, uh, watch some of it, drop a comment, go to Twitter. You can also find me there. Send a message at OdatNurd, and we will see what we can do to help you out. Now let's go ahead and jump right on into what we're doing here. I have the timer, of course, set for 2 hours. And my plans really are sort of all over the board here as for things that can do. Something that Hyperhelp supports is the concept of a history in the help buffer. And that's what allows me to use Alt, left, and right to go back through topics back to the start of when the help view was first created, and Alt right to go back through to where I was. And the history entries update themselves as you move around so that the position in the buffers remains at what it was when you went there. Um, this is also available in the help menu under Hyperhelp. We can see I can go back to window text and forward to Sublime Text. It's just telling me the file that I was in because, of course, it doesn't know what topic I might necessarily be at. But if I click that, it takes me back to the file window.txt. Actually, I guess I could have done that. There's still some changes from a couple of streams ago in play at the moment. So one thing I think would be nice is having that in the context menu here. Another thing that might be nice is this only tells you where you can go forward to or back to. And when you're at one extent of the history, like here I am all the way at the end, the menu item doesn't have a forward because there's nowhere for it to go. And of course, I like everything to be orthogonal here at the beginning. You can't go back. Perhaps be nice if not in this menu, then over here in this menu, um, I'm just I got stalled out there for a second because the file manager plugin is really unhappy about the none type having no attribute rfind in create from selection, whatever that thought it was doing. It's one of the downsides to having a console always open on the other window. It'd be nice if that was maybe displayed here as well or in that menu so that you could see the whole history. I would probably add that up here and not here for the simple reason that in Sublime, menus are either there or not, and enabled or disabled or not, which generally is good. But you'll note here, this entry opens up to Hyperhelp, and then that's help on help and blah, blah, blah. This isn't something that you can conditionally include or not include without doing something crazy like generating Sublime menu resources on the fly. And what that means is, for our purposes, I wouldn't want to have, oh, and actually we can sort of see that here. This Sublimerge tab says I can compare this to a snapshot. Now, let's see if this works. If I create a new empty tab, does it still have a snapshot? Okay, there's actually things in there. Okay, but it's actually possible to end up in a situation where we would want to have, say, a Hyperhelp menu here because we're going to have a few menu commands. Or at the very least, if we're going to have a whole list of history, we don't want that to make this menu really long. But how do you contextually add that? You can't. You can make this sort of command, the command menu item that actually does something, that can be contextual. It can be there or not, invisible or not. We can see right here it can be enabled or not. But this top level menu can't. So if we wanted to have Hyperhelp related items in the menu in a way where it's in the menu and you can see the history, you wouldn't see that over here in this menu. But there would be no way to hide the Hyperhelp thing, and when you hovered over it, either those commands would be in there all grayed out, or this menu just appears as a single pixel line, or something. It depends on your platform of choice. And I don't really like that. It seems weird to me. Now, possibly there are some, other help commands you might want to put in there at any given point. Case in point, something that perhaps might be interesting is because this is a help file, and if I open this and say view.settings.get, and I'm guessing here, if I do that, I can tell that this view is displaying the package Sublime API. And if I change this, I know that it's editing that. So maybe it would be neat if there was a command here in the menu on the context added by the authoring tools that allowed you, while you're looking at a help file, to just edit it and it would immediately open for you to edit, as opposed to using this. And I don't think I've ever actually explained this before, but this edit help file and edit help index command are context sensitive in the sense that if I choose edit help file, it's showing me a list of help files, and this is based on the fact that it knows that I am looking at the Sublime API documentation. If I created a new window and typed edit help file, now it doesn't know what package I'm actually view what a package I'm probably wanting to edit because I don't have a help view open. So it has to ask me for the package. And then after I pick the package, then it can show me a file and I can see the contents and edit them. And every time I do it, I have to do the same thing. So it might be handy to be able to quickly edit a file and do something like that. That's in the list. And related to this whole history mechanism of going forwards and backwards. You see, this is storing a fair bit of information. And as a matter of fact, if I go like this, we can see that the history data that's being stored is the package that a file was loaded from. That's help package, not necessarily a Sublime package. The file that's being loaded. So as we just saw, the example of that would be the index.txt file in the Sublime API package. It also stores the viewport, which is the part of the file that's currently visible, and the caret position, which is how it does that. So perhaps it would be clever to have a right-click menu option in help that said add bookmark here, and you could add bookmark and maybe it would prompt you down in the bottom of this window for the bookmark name. And then there could be a command that displays bookmarks for you and just does what this history is doing and opens that file. To a lesser degree, it might also be interesting to be able to view the history in a pop-up, much like we can do for the table of contents. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. It might be better in the menu. These are the sorts of things that you can, implement off in a branch and see what happens. But before we do all of that stuff, or look into those things, there is something that I actually do want to do, and it relates to how I had this linter file open to begin with. Because although we can lint this file and have it tell us that topic not valid wasn't found in the help index, right? Because that topic is invalid. The sample topic, however, is valid, if you'll recall. Is this the file for that? Yeah. The file test.txt has a topic named sample. So that anchor is valid. And when I do that, that works. But here's a problem that this has that we're not testing. This doesn't have an error, but in fact it is, if you will, an error because this anchor appears in this file more than one time. And in particular, that's a problem because if I say browse available help to user, I'm going to go to this file with just some random command. Now, this topic I want to go to is sample topic. It's going to pick the top one. And it's always going to pick the top one no matter what, based on the way that we process anchors. I mean, these are all still valid. They all have an ID, but if you remember from a few videos ago, we, from the bottom up, get this anchor, rewrite it if necessary, add it to a dictionary that says the topic ID sample appears at line 10, column 1, say. Then we do this one and do the same thing, but because it's a dictionary, that one gets lost. And then it's this one. And then we do it again for this one, and that one gets lost. And then we do it for this one. So we end up only ever being able to find the top one in the list. And remember, we do that from the bottom up because we're modifying the file every time we do it. So we want to make sure that the offsets we've been given for where things are correct, because modifying the file modifies the locations of everything underneath it. So this is actually a problem that we should be getting an error to tell us that an anchor appears more than once in a file, which is only something that we can do either during the post-processing thing when we're actually finding anchors, or here in the help anchor linter, where it's validating various topics. And it gets down to this one when the topic doesn't start with an underscore, so it's not reserved. The index information is not none, so it was found in the index, and it's verified that this topic actually should appear in this file, which is one of the things we added. So this line, or roundabouts this line, is exactly the place to say, all right, we found a topic. It's actually in the index. It's not reserved. It's in the file that it's supposed to be in. Have we seen it before? Because if we have, maybe we should be unhappy about that. So let's see if we can pull that off first, because that's something that's sort of been semi-worrying to me for a little while. And I should also point out that I'm not feeling particularly well. I might be coming down with a cold or something, so apologies if my voice sounds a little weirder than it normally does. Two-hour timer is started. Now let's think about this logically. I'm going to go ahead and hide that to give us a little bit more space here so we can see that whole help view on the right. So here's the theory. We want to be able to tell if a topic has appeared in the file more than once. We're getting called once for every topic in a top-down fashion. So logically speaking, the easiest way to pull something like this off would be to keep track of all of the ones that we've currently seen. And with that, we would totally know, wouldn't we? I should also point out that despite the fact that it's November, it seems like someone just now discovered their Halloween fireworks and they're setting them off like crazy outside. I'm not sure if the microphone is picking that up or not, but there's not a lot I can do about that, unfortunately. Now, we need to keep track of anchors we've already seen. And what's the easiest way to do that to have a set of some sort? Now, lint gets called once per file and then calls validate once per link. So any list of topics we've seen needs to be initialized here and passed in to validate. That's already starting to look kind of long, but let's go ahead and say seen is equal to a set, let's say. And as a matter of fact, we're going to go one farther than this. And we're going to say this. Now let's go ahead and verify here that I'm not going to do the same dumb thing I did before. That does not seem to be what a person wants to do, right? Does that do what I want? That create a set? I think it does because it doesn't have keys and values. I do that every time. Okay. Now here's the reason for this. If we're going to keep track of all anchors that have been seen in a file, it's important to note that the name of the file always appears as an anchor in the very first line of the file at position 0, as a matter of fact, because it's in the header. But when we're linting a help file, we're linting a help file that's like this, one that hasn't been post-processed for display. And in that case, there is no anchor test.txt unless we actually included one in the file like this, which is technically speaking 100% valid, except for that thing where if there's more than one of them, we're probably going to be unhappy about it. So if we want to be able to lint that anchors are already used or in the file previously and this one shouldn't be used here, then we should start this list having assumed we have already seen that file name as an anchor ID, because it's definitely going to be in every file every time, unless the source help file is broken and we don't need anything like that. Now, if we have a set like that, we need to pass it in here. And let's pass it as the first argument to validate in help anchor linter. That keeps that nice. And here we can call this scene topics. So it's passing the set in every time. The question becomes, first of all, we can say here, if the topic is in scene topics, return, we're going to call that definitely an error. You did not mean to do that. The topic, the whatever, already appears in this file. We don't even, oh yeah, we need to dot format with the topic. And I always want to add more English to that than there should be. Maybe we'll do that as well. So the only thing that this should warn us about is the test.txt link, because we haven't done anything else, but that's the only one that's ever going to be in that set. The topic test.txt already appears in this file. That's good. Now, it's not warning us about those because we have to mark that a topic has been seen. Now, hackily, we could add it in here, but let's say we want to do it in the place where this variable is defined. You don't want to do it before you call validate, or it will always be there. But what we can do is say scene.add topic right after the point where we validated it. In fact, that's not returning. So maybe we should put it at the bottom, like so. And I think that's probably going to do, well, let's make sure I reload that whole package. Let's go ahead and relint this. And now that already appears in the file. That one is an error. That one is an error. And that one is an error. So theoretically, that works. And that's a pretty simple change, which is one of the benefits of having modular code like this. Now, something that springs to mind is it's always adding the topic no matter what, which means whether the topic was valid or not, it's added. Is this what we want? If the severity isn't none, then there was an issue with the link. I suppose we probably want to add the anchor. We probably want to add it there. Now, there's not a lot that can go wrong with anchors except for these things. So here's the thing to test. If I said none test as an anchor, that of course should have no problems. And this, I guess we should probably clean these out so that we can make sure this is doing what we want, right? That's okay because none is a valid anchor. What if there was another one? That's still okay, which is what I expect because we don't actually test to see if this is in the scene topics unless we get this far, and because those topics start with underscore, it's either going to return none right away or it's going to return an error. But it's always going to add it to the index. Is that actually a problem for anybody? The topic test is reserved and reserved. Again, there's that. And I guess the thing to note here, what I'm actually talking about is typing scene, like so, to print it. Reloading and linting. We can see that it has seen test and none, even though it hasn't really seen them. I guess it has seen them. Is that actually a big deal? Because set operations aren't zero-sum operations. I assume it's highly optimized. For our purposes, let's go ahead and say that that is totally kosher. So that's still working the way we want it to. And that should cause a problem because the topic sample already appears in this file and it tells us the location of the error. So that's fantastic. And just for, I can't run it from there, can I? No, I can't. But I can edit a help file. Oh, whoops, I need to go to the snappy help. I got to go all the way back to there and edit any old help file and then lint this help file. Well, that particular file is okay. Let's go ahead and edit the index and then lint the index. And oh, look, we're seeing all kinds of problems. The anchor phantom already appears in this file. So someone can't actually navigate to the phantom class constructor, even though it's a topic. Topic IDs, by the way, are not case sensitive. So that is perhaps a problem, and I would imagine many of the classes already have a similar problem because they're using that to get to that up there. So this shows some work that has to happen in Snappy. Region.contains already appears in this file. Now, here's an example of one that it would be easy enough to fix by adding none, like so. And then if I linted that particular file, the topic region appears, but that one's okay. And that would work because it's only ever going to find the first one anyway. This one needs to be here so that it looks correct. There's really no way to disambiguate the two of those based on the name of anything. So that's going to show that some more work needs to happen in at least one help system as a result of the lint, which let's say is a good thing. I mean, I'm sad because it's added more work for me, but on the other hand, I do want my help files to be as robust as possible, right? So let's go ahead and see. This is a very simple one file change, and again, those are some key binding changes that have to do primarily, I've never really explained this, but anchors in files aren't allowed to have spaces in them because it makes the syntax ambiguous. If you're allowed to say test one, and here it looks like it's working, but there's a trick we'll cover in a moment. In order for this to work, then it has to say that there's an asterisk followed by some text followed by another asterisk. And while that works for an anchor, it doesn't say work if you say the sum of 1 times 2 is 3. In this case, this anchor, this star would be like, oh, we're starting an anchor, and this is the text, and it's just to the end of the file, so that would be okay. But if there was another sentence that said, and I'm not, this isn't even right, this is how, I'm kind of loopy right now. It's not actually a sum, it's actually a product of 3 times 2 is 6. Now, if this help text happened to contain this, here's an anchor, here's some text, here's an anchor. So there's an asterisk. So this is an anchor now. Didn't mean for that to be an anchor. As a result, spaces aren't allowed in anchors, although as we can see here, there seems to be one. But note that the invisibles tell you that those are space characters and that's not. That's because that's a non-breaking space, which is a Unicode thing. And there's key bindings that are responsible for inserting those in certain places. Um, and I've been playing around and tweaking with those because there were some issues with them, and I never really got around to fully fixing it because it sort of revolves around the syntax being fixed. And to a lesser degree, I've decided that to relax that restriction, it's probably enough to say an asterisk followed by non-white space definitely starts an anchor. And then the worst case scenario is if anybody wants to include asterisks in their help text without using code ticks, they would have to make sure there's white space around it. So that's something that's going to be fixed at some point, probably in a live stream. But let's go ahead and stage that file and say add one extra linter test for anchors. This adds one new linter test that verifies that every anchor that appears in a file only appears once within that file, since only the first appearance can be targeted by a link. Now keep in mind it's not, like I said, technically a problem per se, because you can still tab to the anchors, you just can't navigate to them. And to a large degree, that's not really a problem, but it's going to be a problem for somebody somewhere when they actually intended to be able to link to something and they can't, and they might not have realized it until it's too late. And we can go ahead and give that a commit. So that's one change down. Duplicate anchors in the same file. Let's go ahead and squiggle that out. What else do I have in here? Edit this help in context menu, edit help in the index, or edit help index to directly open such a file. Now, in order to figure if that's possible or not, well, or less if it's possible, but more immediate feasibility, we can look at the code for the Hyperhelpauthor commands and do that. Now, make a help index, make a help root, update the header. I could really be doing that, but sometimes when I actually know exactly what it is that I'm doing, I work this way. Not always. I mean, that's only because I do a lot of work in Objective-C, and the syntax for Objective-C isn't as good as it could be because Objective-C is a ridiculous language to try and parse. So the symbol index doesn't necessarily tell you everything you need to know anyway. So sometimes I'm not in the habit of doing that. I happen to know that it's going to work just great in Python, but I also, at some level, I'm also trying to refamiliarize myself with these because, as we can see, the last time I did something with this file was apparently 10 months ago. These commands could be cleaned up a little bit, and they will be cleaned up a little bit, but they're perfectly functional for what I need them for, which is creating help files easier, which allows me to verify that my changes are working, and it's providing real-world experience for how the help files are being laid out, which has driven a lot of features that weren't originally planned. Or if you will, this is one of those things I was talking about in the last video. It maybe not have been necessarily planned one way or the other, but I was reserving judgment because it's not necessarily a good idea to make design decisions when you're not fully sure of how the design should work, if that makes sense. Um, an example of that is the idea that we did in the streams where anchors can have a ID that's unique from their text instead of appearing like this and having the text and the anchor ID being identical. Um, for a long time, up until just recently, that was absolutely no problem at all, and it only became a problem when I hit a help package that needed that. So for a long time, I was somewhat hesitant to add that particular feature for the purposes of allowing you to define different IDs for things because it wasn't clear to me that it was 100% necessary in a real world situation. Remember, these are a markup kind of file, but they're a markup kind of file that's specifically designed for help. So is that something someone would actually do? And of course, it turns out that in the case of that particular help thing for the Sublime theme file where properties for different objects are reused all over the place, it's important to be able to actually do that. And to a larger degree, it also tied in really nicely with the ability to create interpackage links, which is something that, while it wasn't strictly necessary, I knew a ways back as something that was still going to be damn useful. So if we see here, we can call Hyperhelpauthor edit help and pass it a package argument and a file argument and a prompt argument. Now, this is the magic that drives that thing that I demonstrated a couple of minutes ago, where if I say edit help file or edit help index in this thing, it automatically assumes that I want to edit something related to the help that I'm currently looking at. And that's this. A combination of being provided a package, which might be none, and being provided a Boolean called prompt, which might be true but is set to false. So the package is either the package you provided or the current help package in the current window, which in this case is the Sublime API. Then, if the package is still none, we would have to ask the user for a package. Or, if the prompt is set to true, definitely prompt for a package no matter what. And then it calls help package prompt, which if we follow the definition up here, well, I guess it's going to open it over here because it's a common file in the Hyperhelp package itself that knows how to find all of the help packages, show them to you, let you pick a package, and then invoke a callback. And the invoked callback that it calls runs this same command again. And note that we can call self.run on a window command in a way we can't for an edit command because a window command doesn't receive an edit parameter, whereas a text command does. And Sublime expires the edit object at the end of the command execution. This is probably still, we should probably still be calling self.run command, but this works well enough for now. So this command is actually already doing something that we want. Like we can see here, this is definitely the Sublime Text 3 API documentation, but as a test, if I said window.run command, and the command was hyperhelp author edit help, and shame on me, that doesn't have the word command on the end of it when it totally should. And the package to edit was the user package, and the file to edit was index.txt. Then it focuses that file that's already open because that's the magic of Sublime doing something with opening a file. And I can go ahead and do that again. So 100%, if I could come up with a command that knows that it's being executed in one of these types of files, that is the actual edited help view, then we could invoke this command and edit this thing directly. Now, the question becomes, in this case, I mean, I think I showed that this will tell you, well, if you have the focus in the appropriate file, this will tell you the file that we need for that argument, and this will tell us the package we need for that argument. So it's easy enough to extrapolate this. The question becomes, first of all, how irritated am I that none of these commands have the word command on the end of it? Because that's it. Like, it works, but it's not something that I tend to do. So I'm kind of surprised that I did that. Okay, let's see. That is a command. That's a command. That's a command. That's a command. That is a command. That one actually has one, so that's unfortunate. Skip over that one. That one already has one. That one does not. And that one does, so we'll skip it. So we're just into that. So I think I can do that. And let's go ahead and jump into Smurge. Update header command, create help command, edit help command, index command, index command. That one has one that should, so I accidentally let one through. Let's discard that hunk. Lint command, and then all of that stuff that makes no, never mind. So I can stage that, minimize that, and that, and that. So that is just doing some nice stuff there. Let's say we're going to add missing command suffix to authoring commands. Due to some sort of brain oversight, the commands in the, most of the commands in the authoring tools did not have the customary command suffix on their class name, which has now been fixed. And we'll go ahead and shoot that. Now, both of those changes weren't in branches. I don't think it's necessary to create a branch to create one commit and then use a merge commit to bring that command or that back over. But we are going to create another branch here in a second. Really, the gist of this whole change is that Sublime obtains the name of the command from the class name, and it does that by converting it from camel case to snake case. So all the uppercase letters become lowercase letters with a preceding underscore, except for the very first character in the class, which is just lowercase without a leading underscore. And once that's all done, if the text underscore command appears on the end, it throws it away. So it works without the command on there, but really when you're using this to be able to look at classes, it's helpful as you're scanning through this list here or even through your code to know that because that says command, it's definitely a command as opposed to this. Linterbase is actually a class that has nothing to do with a Sublime command of any sort. So that one has no command on the end. And similar, these classes down here, which have linter on the end, similarly the way that those would have command on the end, just to let me know that that's what they are, although it doesn't really matter for any particular purpose. So that's wholly a cosmetic thing, and this is still going to work. So now the question becomes, how do we want to do this? Because, and here's here's the situation. There is a command, which we were just looking at. Let's take this one, for example. Edit index command. Also takes the name of the package whose index you want to edit. Which defaults, so if I did it in this one, it would always open the Hyperhelp index, but maybe I want to open the user index instead. This takes a parameter that does that. So it's possible to just add Hyperhelpauthor edit index to a context menu because it's a command. And what package would it actually pass there? Well, that's the more tricky part, right? We can modify this code to try and figure that out. I mean, technically we don't have to because it's going to examine it. So realistically, I could add this command right now to the context menu, and in this file, it would do what I want by default. Unfortunately, down in this file, it would prompt the user for a package when you pick it because this isn't a help file. So, or it is a help file, but it's not the presented help file, right? So this doesn't have the setting that tells it the current help package, so it would have to prompt. And maybe that actually makes the vaguest amount of sense here for that menu item to appear in the context menu for a help source file. Maybe I do want to edit the index for this file, but I don't know how I would necessarily figure that out because it doesn't have the appropriate setting. But over here in this Python file, it's definitely not going to do what I want. This isn't help at all. So I could make the command contingent on it being in a file of type hyperhelp, text.hyperhelp. Then it will be disabled in this file and enabled in those. That makes it hard to add it to a menu though, because whatever the current file is the one that would be used for that in the menu command, which probably, or it would depend on what window you're in, if that command. So this is something that I actually ran into in my override audit package. I created one context command for the purpose of doing all of context type actions, and then was sad about that because it makes it harder to add new commands. And then I got into an issue where I don't want menu items to appear in a menu if they don't apply. But by the same token, you do still want them to be in main menus sometimes. And now you have to have an is visible method that somehow figures out whether it should or should not be visible based on circumstances that might be different from whether or not it's actually currently enabled, because in the main menu you want a command to appear and be disabled, but so someone knows it's there so they can find it when they need it, as opposed to in the context menu. It was a whole big kettle of fish. So the point of all of that ranting is saying maybe we want a context menu for operations to take in a help file. And again, that could actually be perhaps in this window. Well, for the purposes of editing of the help index, either would work. For the purposes of edit help file, whoops, I got to be in the correct file for that to be right. Or sorry, I guess it's just called edit help. For the purposes of this one should only apply in this view. You don't need a menu item to allow you to edit the file you're currently already editing. That, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So first of all, we're going to go into Smurge and type create branch, and what will we call it? Context menus, let's say. And we're on that branch. That's good. So let's do the thing we normally do where we run through the code, make it do something, and then decide how we want to proceed from there. So this would be class Hyperhelp author context edit help command. And in this case, we're going to call it a text command and not a window command because it's going to apply to files and not to the window as a whole. And it's going to have a run method that is going to take a parameter of edit because all text commands do. Now, does it need any other arguments? I don't think it does. And we're going to go ahead and pass on that. And then we're probably going to need an is, well, let's say, yeah, well, is enabled. Go ahead and do that, and is visible thusly. And as a matter of fact, this is the sort of situation as a context menu command where we can say return self.is enabled for this and not just return true. So this is the method that will get called when the command is executed. This is the method that will get called by Sublime to see if this command applies. If this returns true, it does apply. The command can be executed. If this returns false, the command cannot be executed, and run will never be executed in that case. That includes if it's a key binding, if it's a menu, if someone manually says run command, if that command has an is enabled and is enabled returns false, nothing happens. And this one asks you, is this command visible or not? And if this command is visible, it appears in the menu. Now, the question becomes, for the author, do I have a context.sublime menu? No, I don't. I do not have such a thing. Okay, so here's how I normally do that. Default context menu. This is the context menu that appears in the default package. We're going to save as that up one folder and down into Hyperhelpauthor resources as context.sublime menu. And then we have to close it and reopen it because that's going to make it read only. And now, look, all of the context menu items in the core are doubled. So there's 2 select alls, 2 cuts, 2 copies, 2 pastes, because this isn't actually what we want to do. But we do need that. This adds a separator with a menu ID value of end, which is at the bottom of the menu, so that the commands that we inject are at the bottom of the menu. And Sublime is smart enough to coalesce multiple contiguous separators and drop the ones from the bottom. And so now we can say the caption is Hyperhelpauthor edit this help file. And the command is that one that we just created, Hyperhelpauthor context edit help. Boop. And it doesn't need any arguments because it's going to get everything it needs from the view. And now I'm confused at how that happened. So just to be on the safe side, I'm going to quit and restart. Reopen the console over there. There's that. Hyperhelpauthor, edit this help file, and it appears in places that it technically shouldn't appear. Right? Now, I can go ahead and close that because now I don't need it anymore, and everything else can happen here. This probably be a good if you've never added items to a context menu before. This is the Hyperhelpauthor events for pre-save. Oh, it's actually in help. My bad. It's a core thing. It's not an authoring thing. So I look in this events file. And on query context, the view is read only. This may or may not actually require some work, to be perfectly honest. Oh, because the other one also uses the other thing. Okay. This is something that's used in key bindings to make sure, for example, question mark only does something here. It makes sure that it only works in a help file, and it makes sure that it's authoring, which is based on whether or not the view is read only or not. So that's okay. So I can say return self.view.match selector at point 0, and the selector to match is text.hyperhelp.help. If we match that selector, then we can say return self.view.is read only. Otherwise, we return false. So if the selector doesn't match text hyperhelp help, it never gets into the if and returns false. And if it does match text hyperhelp help, then whether or not this is an editing command depends on whether or not the view is read only or not. This view is not read only. This view is read only. So this isn't help. We shouldn't see it here, and we don't. This is help, but it's not read only, so we shouldn't see it, and we don't. This is help, and it is read only, and we should see it, and we do. But when we pick it, nothing happens. So we can actually, let's double check what this does. Obtain the package that contains the currently displayed help file. If you pass, this is one of those neato situations where if you pass window, window is the window that find help view is invoked in, but otherwise window is none. And I think we'll find if we look here that if window is none, it becomes Sublime's active window. So we can call current help package and current help file. We don't even have to pass a view as the first argument, and it'll infer the view, but we're going to pass that. So current help package, current help file. Both of these are in Hyperhelp Common, which I would imagine should already be up here. Current help package, current help file. Yes. So here's my command. Package is that. File is that. And for both of these, we're going to pass self.view because this is a text command, and allow it to pick up the active window. You know what? just for the sake of completeness, we can also say this, self.view.window. What the heck? I mean, technically speaking, neither of these are possible because we've gone out of our way to make sure this command is only available in the exact situation where this window does have a help view. And it is the current view. So technically, both of these calls are going to return the same thing either way, but it makes it a little nicer to look at. Self.window. Oh, nope, nope. Self.view.window.run command. And the command to run is Hyperhelpauthor edit help. Thus, and the arguments to pass are package, which is package, and file, which is file. So just like that, in theory, that is doing what we want. That seemed like that was a pretty simple change, and it's not going to work here, but that's okay. We don't want it to work there. We're already editing that file. Similarly, we want something like class hyperhelp author context edit index command. And again, that's going to be a text command, right? This one gets a little more complicated. Def run self pass. Again, we want a def is enabled, takes no arguments. We'll say it returns true. And the def is visible, and we're going to say that returns self.is enabled, just like above. And okay, that is good. We need to add an extra line there. VP and edit context menu. Edit help index. We'll call it edit this help index for now. I don't know what the best way to do that is. And the command name is that. So again, it's down there when it shouldn't be. It's there when it should be. And it's there when it should be, along with that other command. And we can go ahead and close that again. Now, here, we just want self view match selector 0 text.hyperhelp.help, right? We don't need to test if the view is read-only because we don't want it to appear in the Python, which it doesn't. We do want it to appear here in this file so we can edit the index for this package. But we also want it to work here. And this is the one where it's actually going to cause us a little bit of a problem because this one has a setting that tells us exactly where this should be, but this one doesn't. This one is just a regular package file. And this is one of those things that I mentioned in the last stream. I can say this. So it can get the current help package for the current view and the current window, which now makes sense in a way this one didn't, because this can operate in any help file, including whether or not the Hyperhelp tab is currently open or not. And now this code looks the same for both of them, so that's good. And then I could say if package is none, there's something we have to do to figure out what the package should be. And then we can say if package is not none, then self.view.match. No, run command. Self.view.window, run command, and the command to run is hyperhelpauthor edit index. And let's go ahead and hide that sidebar again because it's getting in my way. And the arguments are package of package, and we can remove the pass. Now this is one of those weird things where if it's not none, we're going to do something, and then if it is none, we're going to do something, and if it's not none, then we're going to do something else. Now the reason for that is because this is currently to remind me that this is the case. This is going to find the help file up here. So if I do this, it should edit this help index. And run takes one positional argument, but two were given. What did I do? Hyperhelpauthor edit index. I've already lost track of, oh, is it below? Did I do this in the create index? Hyperhelpauthor edit index. It doesn't take two arguments, it just takes package. But this does point out that I should drop these down to the bottom of the file. So let's go ahead and do that now. And then investigate what dumb thing I did there. Okay, one more line. Okay, here takes one argument, but two were given. And here takes one argument, but two were given. Edit index command. Hyperhelpauthor edit index command takes self and package is none and prompt is false. So technically I should be able to call it with no arguments, or I can call it with a package, right? Let's comment those lines out and make sure that I haven't broken something somewhere. I'll go ahead and reload that whole thing. Did I add the wrong one to the context menu? No, Hyperhelpauthor context edit index. Context edit help. Context edit index command. Do that. This one. It doesn't say running for that one. Oh, good gravy. I just said that earlier in the stream too. Gah. Okay, put that back. Again, if you think that editing packages is all peaches and cream, no, even when you know what you're doing, you still don't know what you're doing. Okay, so in this one, something bad will happen, but not that thing. Or sorry, nothing will happen there because it's still none. But here, it should actually edit the file. And boop, there it is. If it was in another thing, it would have edited it. So if the package defaults to that, if it's none, we need to do something to figure out what package this file is actually in. And then, if the package is not none, we can actually do it. But if the package is none, don't do this. And that's just because it's theoretically possible to be editing a help file that's not as a part of a package or not a part of a package whose index is known. And in that case, we can't edit that file. We probably would have returned back in that case, but we haven't written that code yet, right? This is one of those things that used to be easier to do before the advent of it being possible for one Sublime package to have more than one help package in it. Back in those early days, say the Snappy package could contain only one hyperhelp.json index file, so it can contain only one help system. Well, then it's really easy to see if this file is one that applies to this. All we have to do is say, does its path start with sublime.packages path? If the file name starts with this, then it's definitely a package file at least, so we can continue. But if it doesn't start with that, we don't care. This isn't in the Sublime Packages folder. This can't possibly be anything interesting. Now, if it is in the packages file, and we can see here, it's in packages user help index. Well, you throw away the common prefix, which is this, you end up with this path element. That's the name of the package that this file is in. Then you look up the help package to see if that is a known help package, and if it is, you're good to go. This is no longer possible because if I edit this help file and view its name, we see that. And if I browse available help to Sublime Build, edit that one, go away FM commands, you're wrecking my console, and edit this help file and view its file name. Now, File Manager got in the way with its crunky, this file something, I don't even know what that's doing. Notice this one is Packages Snappy API view. This is Packages Snappy Build index. These both appear in the Snappy package, but this part is the important part, the build or the API or whatever. So now it's not possible to actually do that easily. I'm pretty sure somewhere in this authoring code, there's something that's doing it the old way that's probably broken. In which case, there may be a place where it's doing it right. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what that might be. This is an example of you try to edit something and it tells you that you can't because that package is unknown, which is a good thing for us to know when we get to editing this at the bottom. We don't have to verify technically that this is something that's actually a package that's loaded per se. But maybe we want to change whether or not this is valid, this command is valid based on this information. I believe we do something like this. From Hyperhelp core, import help index list. Okay, that's a function. And it contains a dictionary whose keys are all of the packages that are known to us. And this is not Sublime packages. This is help packages because Sublime API, Sublime Build, Sublime Color Scheme, those are all help systems inside the single Snappy package. The values for these keys is all of this stuff here. And as a matter of fact, it's probably nice for me to do this. Help data is the name tuple that contains these things. So if I said help index list for Sublime API, oh, sorry, it's a function that returns the dictionary. If I did this, I should get the dictionary that is, or represent that tuple represents all of the fields in it, and there's a bunch of them. And in here, if I said package, or actually I think I can say dot package, the package is Sublime API. That's right, because it's a named tuple that it's returning as a value. And this is the interesting part, I think. Here's the index file, and here is the document root. And the document root is snappy/API. It doesn't have the packages prefix for the document root, but packages/snappy/API is the location where this file is. So if we know how to strip that common prefix for a path off, then we should be able to do this. I'm going to leave that open for the time being. We don't want that file because we have one to test with, and we don't need that one per se. But let's bring that over here because we might want to refer to that named tuple again. And this is the point at which I'm curious in the authoring tools. Have I done this already? Ugh. This is the one from the core, so let's open this one. Is authoring source? Local help file name. Determine what the full file name of a help file from the given package would be if it was stored locally. That's a different thing. Open local help. Open help index. Apply authoring settings. So I haven't, in fact, already created something like this. Probably. This smacks of something that's probably going to be useful. Which one of these? Let's go up here. Def, let's say is. We'll call it something. And it's going to take a view. And it's going to return something. Let's just think for a second what we want this to do. We want to pass a view and determine two things. First, we want to know, does this view represent a file that's in a package that's loaded that we know what it is? And the second thing we want to know is, what is the name of the package that that is a part of? Because we can't infer it from the file name. The path is going to tell us Snappy, but Sublime API is actually the thing. Now, we're gonna have to do a bunch of manipulation on this view file name to figure out if it's actually a part of a package, and if it is, if it's part of a package whose document root we know, and That would tell us which entry this is. So if we just wanted to know, is this file a part of a package that's loaded, we can figure that out. And if we want to know what the package is, we would have to do all of that work again to figure out the path to know the entry so that we can call .package to figure out what the package is. And it seems silly to do the same work twice in a row. So we could call this package for view, let's say. The idea would be something like this. Given a view object, oh, I can't type, provides you back the loaded help index for the help package that contains the file. This may be none if this file is not a package file for a known loaded. Is not, sorry. Given a view object provides you back the loaded help index, the help index tuple, I guess we should call it, for the help package that contains this file. This may be none if this file is not a package, not a Sublime package file, or if it doesn't correspond to a loaded help package. Let's make sure that flows. This does not verify that the file is actually a part of the provided help package, only that it appears to, only that it is in. Okay. So the default there is to return none. Now, how do we proceed with this information? This is one of those things where we may have to dig on down through this in some sort of semi-logical fashion and see what we can come up with, because we have all of the bits and pieces of this. We can say if view.filename, then do something, otherwise return none, because files that haven't been saved yet have a file name of none. And if that's the case, we're never going to figure anything out, right? Also, this tells us the package path. If the file name doesn't start with that, then it's also not something we care about. So if view.filename starts with sublime.packages path, do something. Instead of that one. My terminal over here got way out of sync because I scrolled it back. Okay. Still see that in here, right? Yeah. Still stinging on that. So now we can actually do this. Print appears to be a package file, right? So from hyperhelpauthor.common import package for view and package for view view. Did I, oh, whoops. Package view view. This appears to be a package file. That appears to be a package file. I assume this appears to be a package file. This shouldn't, because it doesn't have a file name. This has a file name, but it doesn't appear to be a package file. So that part's working. What's the next thing that we need to know? This is the interesting thing. We know that this starts with the packages folder. Now, going back to what we discovered here, this doc root doesn't have the package prefix on it. It just has that. And I think the reason for that, I can't remember what this thing is called. Returns the longest path prefix taken character by character. That is a prefix. Yeah, okay, that's not actually what one needs to do. This. If I say view sublime dot packages path, I get that. If I say view dot file name, I get that. And if I said view dot file name and I wanted to slice off the length of sublime dot packages path, I would end up, well, I got to add one because of that trailing slash. This will give you the file name without that part on it. We're going to need sublime.packages path in a couple of places. So let's say spp is equal to sublime.packages path like so. And then we can do this. That should still work. And then we can say file name is view.filename with len of spp plus 1. And then we can actually say this. So if we go back to doing that test we were doing a second ago, oh, whoops. I'm going to have to go ahead and say is not none here, just to be safe, because maybe it's possible for something to have a blank file name. Okay. Hyperhelpauthor common pi appears to be a package file. User help test.txt appears to be a package file. So that's what we want there. Now, I don't think currently we don't support the idea of there being multiple directories inside the document root, but I don't know that that's actually enforced anywhere. I just know that it by no means will actually work, probably in some way. In some ways, it probably will. Certainly, file names up there would look all weird in the help header of a file or something. So, might be enough to say for packages in help index list, if file name starts with package.docroot. You return package. Maybe that'll do something. This ought to return none, I would imagine. Help index list is not defined. Oh my. Import help index list. How terrible is that? Go ahead and reload that whole shebang. I don't actually know what that iterates, to be perfectly honest. Let's do that. It's returning keys, huh? For package info, package name in items. Probably want that. Okay, that one doesn't match because it's not actually inside of a document root. Well, that did something. Package for view dot package, let's say. Okay. That's the user package. This is a subscript error because that has a none type that doesn't match anything. And up here in this file, that won't work. We need, okay, this doesn't necessarily have to be there. That's still user anyway, but that's a fluke. The help index doesn't necessarily have to be in the document root or anything. Let's take this back to the example of edit this help file, and in this file it's Sublime API. Okay, that worked. And browse available help, build, and edit this help file, and that is a file manager error. That is Sublime build. So this seems to be returning what we want. I don't know if I necessarily enjoy the name. Well, I can't think of anything better. Now if we come back over here, we can say if self.view.match selector 0 text dot hyper. Whoa. My dog is being naughty. If that, then proceed. Otherwise, return false. And because we may want to say return package for view self.view is not none, which isn't going to work. And I think we'll see an error in the console because we haven't imported that yet. From.common import package for view. Okay, now it's available there. It's not available there. It's available here. Both of those are in help packages. Now here's why that's important. If I create a new tab and paste that in, this is help. It's not backed by a package. That command doesn't appear here. Now a second ago, it would have because it matches the selector text hyperhelp help. But now it doesn't, even though it matches the selector, package for view is returning none, in this case because this doesn't have a file name. But if it did have a file and it was saved in my home directory as test.txt, which may or may not clumber over something, and I'm pretty sure I don't care. Now, I think I would have to sin help it. Can I do that? No. Now it's not failing because of that. Settings. I hid the syntax, which is an unfortunate turn of events. There. It's a help file. It has a file name. That command still doesn't exist. But over here, it still does. Absolutely perfect. Better delete that before something untoward happens. Now, if package is none, no, actually, we don't need to do that. Package is equal to package for view self.view dot package, right? Because this command can only run if isEnabled returned true, and isEnabled can only return true if package for view didn't return none, and so package for view didn't return none, and so we can ask it what its package is and use that. So now, what was the purpose of this whole thing? I can edit the help index here in this one because it has a current help package, and here it is. And even though this doesn't have a current help package, I can edit its help index. That is pretty handy, I think, as far as features go. Edit this help in context menu is a thing we just did. Edit help index in a context menu is a thing that we just did. So we can go ahead and scribble both of those hastily written notes out. And we still have 37 minutes in this live stream. Not counting my strong desire to actually commit this code. So let's go ahead and jump in there and do that first. And now there's 6 unstaged files. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Okay, we don't care, we don't care, we don't care. Untracked files, resources, context menu. Yeah, we want that. Maybe we're not entirely happy with those menu entries, especially since it says Hyperhelpauthor in the text. Um, Sublime merge. Okay, well that's a package I created, so that's shouldn't actually. Oh yeah, this is an open file, so that would work. Over here, Sublimerge is doing that. We don't want to do that because, as I said at the beginning, there's no way to create a top-level Hyperhelpauthor thing that is hidden if no Hyperhelpauthor commands exist. So once we come up with one more Hyperhelpauthor context command, which should always apply whether it's in a help file or not, that's something we can do. For right now, we can't. So we're going to prefix our commands like so. Edit this help index. And here in this help file, should that not allow me to edit the help index? Did I break something? Wasn't that working a second ago? Hmm. Well, maybe we won't commit that while we investigate what the heck happened there. Oh, no, that's right. No. Oh. Yeah, I did break that, didn't I? Okay, rethink. I got ahead of myself there because I was already thinking of this part. This really does need to match that. If it matches this, so let's go ahead and put this back to the way it was before, which is just that. That's also not good. So it just always enabled like so. So yeah, there we go. Now it's back where it's supposed to be. That was unfortunate. Okay, edit that help file. And we can only edit the index there. We can only edit the index and file there, which is what we want. So that's good. So now it is in fact possible for package for view self.view. And then we can say if package info is not none, package equals package info dot name. Dot package. And remove that. Now this does look kind of ugly, but you can see where normally you would say something like packages current help package or blah, but there's no good way to say this. Current help package equals current help package or package for view if package info is not none else package. So oh, it's awful. Try to get it. If it's none, look up the package for this view, and if we got one, set it. And then if it's still set, do it. So I can edit, whoa. All kinds of things are disabled over here. Oh, yeah, my code is broken. Phew. There, okay. I can edit this help file. I can edit this help index. There's the index for snappy build. There's the help file, the index for snappy build. I can take it back one. I can edit this help file, which is now the view class, and I can edit this help index, which is now the index for snappy API. And down here, I can edit the help index for this, which edits that one. So now it's doing what we want. We definitely, well, stage that. We're going to skip. We are, for the current purposes, happy with that. And Those are the commands we added, which don't have any weird debug prints in them. So let's go ahead and stage that and say, first of all, was it necessary to put this in a branch if we were going to do it all in one shot? I probably intended to commit this as multiple things and not as one big one. So, uh, um, fudge. We'll just leave it the way it is. We can merge it without merge it with the fast forward, and then it doesn't matter. There is still, well, those aren't authoring commands. That was the other thing. I had other ideas for things to put in the context menu, but they're in the core. They're not in the authoring tools. Okay. Include context menus for easier editing. For directly editing either the currently visible, edit the currently, the help file currently being viewed, or the help index for the current file. In the first case, this allows you to edit the source of any viewed file by using the context menu in the help view. In the second case, any open help file, including the help view, which is part of, contained in the document root of the is eligible for editing the index that file is contained in. Okay, we'll go like that. Check out master, merge context menus, like so, delete branch, context menus. And I never really pushed that stuff up, huh? I thought I did. Well, the only way to find a bug is to push it, so let's push it up to there. Push master to GitHub master. And make those changes available en masse. All right. Now, I guess I had the notion there's that whole history thing, and 27 minutes I'm not entirely sure is enough time to get into how that should all work, because I'm not entirely familiar with how the history system works per se. I mean, I kind of am. I know that it has that structure that we looked at that tells you the file and the package and the cursor location and the viewport. And I know that the internal core API for showing a help topic has a parameter that tells it if it should update the history or not, which you can set to true or false. If you set it to true, a new entry is added to the history list. If you set it to false, the topic is just displayed without fiddling it, and there are hidden settings in the view that keep track of the number of history items and what index is the current one, so that as you go backwards, it subtracts one from that index, moves you back through time, and then You can also go forward in time, but as soon as you follow a link, if you're not at the end of the history, it becomes the new end of the history, just like in a thing. I know that. I know how that works because I spent a lot of time and a lot of morning walks figuring that out. But I don't remember exactly how it's implemented. And certainly for the purposes of bookmarks, that's less of an issue because we can probably just stash that information in a settings file. So maybe that's something to try to look at as a context menu item in Help Core itself, because it doesn't necessarily deal with history. But in order to save a bookmark, you also want to be able to go to a bookmark, and that requires more thought because I don't know if that should be a context menu entry or a command palette entry. There are a few ways that that could actually go. So I haven't really given that part that much thought, just that I want to actually create bookmarks. So the other thing I have is the index command and the table of context commands should take an initial text parameter. And I think for the purposes of that, we can close this and this and type commands, and we want the one in Hyperhelp. And the command we want is, this is the command that displays the, did I pick the right one? Yeah. This is the one that displays the table of contents, which is this thing here. And it does it being that thing I mentioned. It gets the current help package prompts if it was asked. And then it shows the table of contents, which displays this. Now, I had the idea that this could have an initial text argument so that that text would appear when you open the table of contents, which is kind of what happens if you open Snappy from a Python file with text selected. It opens the index with text pre-entered in there, if unless there's exactly one reference. So, for example, if the cursor was on is enabled, then it can't jump to that topic directly because there's 3 of them, but it adds text is enabled, like so that you can easily pick one. But if there was only one such entry, it just takes you directly there. It knows that the text under the cursor was the text active window, and when it asks the index, it only finds one topic that matches. So it just goes ahead and sends you there. So at some level, Snappy is kind of doing this, but I wanted, I think, this command to do it natively. So let's investigate Snappy's Py file here. The Snappy lookup command. Let's see. If topic is not none, insert the text. So self window run command insert is the thing that allows you to insert text into a widget. For example, let's just do a little test here in a brand new window. If I say view.run command append, insert, and the characters to insert is text, it gets added to that thing up there because I'm running it on the view, right? Makes sense. If I said window run command insert, it ends up down here in the console text because this is actually a widget, which is why I can say get syntax highlighting like so. So if you open a command palette and you do that, you get that action. On the other hand, if you say this, now it goes into the actual active view. Because window.run command, when you tell it to run a text command, it delegates based on focus. Whereas active view is the actual active view, which uses a different mechanism for thinking about how things work. Close without saving. So that's how it's doing it. Snappy is doing it itself. Like that by running hyperhelp index with the package, and if topic is not none, inserting the topic, which I guess at some level it maybe still has to do, or maybe it doesn't. If this actually took arguments of initial text, it could do that. And it doesn't have to have this. And more importantly, you could create a keybind that does the same thing, which I think is the reason why I wanted that. And ditto for table of contents, although arguably maybe it's not as interesting there. So let's look first at how to do it for the index. Help index command. I get one thing that we would have to have here is initial text is none, right? And just by itself, I think everything still works the way one wants it to work. I can still get the index. And the reason for that is help package prompt invokes a lambda with the given package that just runs run with package, which is the first argument, and then initial text is still none and prompt is false. And if we got down here, it looks it up and then it opens the quick panel. So on the face of it, just by adding that, if I said, and this is an application command, so I have to say sublime.activeWindow. If initial text, active command, run command, insert with characters of initial text, which is just slightly too long. And again, pressing I, well, let's reload the whole package like so. That still works, right? So if I said sublime.run command hyperhelp index, it should prompt me for a package, okay? Which is not what I want, but I want to say package is Sublime API. And this is the same as pushing the I key, and it shows the help index. And if I said initial text is an empty string, nothing happens. That is what I would expect. And if it said API, function object has no attribute run command. Oh, did I do it again? Yeah, I did. You wouldn't believe how often I do that. Reload the whole thing. Try one more time. And it totally popped it up with the text in there, which is awesome. Now, where this falls down is in this case. Because it should insert the text, but first it has to prompt me because there's no package. And once I pick one, oh, sorry, it's not going to prompt because it knows. So what I actually need to say is prompt true, which incidentally is why that argument is there. You might have wondered if it either uses the current package or the one that you provide, why do you care to prompt? And the reason for that is because sometimes you want to display the index for a package and you want to display an index and allow the user to pick what package to use, and you can't do that without having a special variable there, because the only way to do it is to say package none, and then it will infer it. But by adding prompt true, you tell it that even though it found one, you prompt anyway. And now we'll see that the problem is it's going to prompt me. True is not defined. I know that true is not defined. What did I just edit? Oh my goodness. Oh, right. It was the command I executed. Eesh. Okay. It's prompting me. I'm going to pick Sublime API. And then it should open the index and insert the text API, right? Don't think so. And the reason for that is because this lambda is invoking that, but it needs to also pass initial text. And now the lambda is too long. So that's unfortunate. Can you split a lambda across lines? Looks like maybe. All right. So that's easy. For the purposes of the index command, we can do that. What about the table of contents command? Actually, we can also come over to here and modify this. Right? Bring that over there. Initial text is topic, which should work the same, because if topic isn't none, it's going to pass it, it's going to run that command. If topic is none, then it's not going to do anything over here, because it only does it if initial text, and then it won't do that if it's none. So this part can go away now. Maybe I'll add a comma here so that it doesn't get mad about that. And we can double check. So again, if I have it on run command, I'm going to reload this whole package. If I have it on run command, hit the key, it inserts the text run command like we would expect. If I have the text Sublime run command selected, it goes there directly. So that's an example of making the index command have an additional initial text item. So let's smudge that. Well, I guess we can close this one now for the Hyperhelp. Whoops, I pushed the wrong button. So what would we say here? Oh, we need to switch back to master for this one. Drop our syntax tweaks for the time being. I still need to do some more work on those. I haven't done anything with that since the last time. Modify the index command to allow initial text. This is a simple modification to the existing command that opens the help index for either a specific package or one the user specifies, so that the text initially entered into the quick panel can be pre-entered for the user. Snappy uses this to display partial matches on topics when the index contains more than one matching relevant topic. And I can stage that file and commit it up. And then one last thing, the same thing should happen for the table of contents. And again, that works very similar. That is, initial text is none, and we need to 1, 2, 3, 4 self-run package initial text like so, and could probably come back down here. Now this is where this might get a little sticky. It shows talk. Show talk does all of this. This is where it shows the quick panel. So I will, whoops, insert that there, which isn't going to do anything good right now because does this recursively call itself? Yes, yes it does. So we'll say the first argument to show talk is, oh, see now maybe this is the sticky. Maybe I don't want to do this. Only for the index and not for the table of contents. I think this cross-moginates with the idea that the way that the table of contents works and the way that the index works are fairly similar, and I was pondering blending them together. But whereas when you initially open the table of contents, maybe it is helpful to insert some text in there. Because this is hierarchical, every time I do this, it would try to insert that text, which is not what you want. Now, at some level, I can make it so that it only does it when the stack is empty, so it only happens the first time. But when I go back to the top, it would reinsert the text, which is probably not what you want. So it would really, really have to do something like keep a Boolean so that it keeps track of the number of times it calls show quick panel and only ever does it once. And I don't know that that is necessarily something that I'd like to have happen. So let's say for our purposes that this actually is not something we want to do for that one. So we can discard that change. I'm gonna well, check out branch syntax tweaks and merge master. What does this do? I don't know. We'll just merge it. We can always clean this stuff up a little bit later. Because I want to keep working on that branch. That's the next thing to go. And that leaves not, okay, that's just that one. That just leaves that whole history thing as something that is potential, but the stream only has 6 minutes remaining before I run out of time. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's probably not something that it's time to embark on right now. And I'll even close that particular panel and come back to here. Now, what are the other things that we want to do in this? Let's go ahead and discuss that for the last few minutes because I don't really have any coding topics. The overall goal is sometime before the end of the month to have core coding complete on Hyperhelp to turn it into an actual dependency. It's probably going to take at least one, if not more, streams to write the code that bootstraps the package, which is necessary when it becomes a dependency. And there's every opportunity that that might actually partially happen off of the live stream entirely because it's something that once the process starts, I can't really do much of anything else until I finish because it requires changing the layout of the package in a way that it won't work the way it currently does. Some files need to be renamed as a part of that operation. So that may not be something that I'm directly interested in doing it and then waiting 3 days and going again. Because if you've seen, it was quite a hardship last week to not be able to use Hyperhelp while we were doing that fact-finding mission. Bookmarks are a nice to have feature, but they're not a core feature. But the syntax is a core feature, so that's something that needs to be worked on a little bit. There actually is some history items, even if we don't want to add bookmarks. Currently, history is unbounded, and it's stored in settings in the buffer, which are persisted in the session. So theoretically, assuming that you keep a Hyperhelp tab open all the time, which I tend to do, as you can see, and you just keep navigating topics and you don't often go back, that history is getting bigger and bigger all the time. So one of the things to do is actually artificially constrain that that input. Um, so there's that. Oh, I'm trying to think of what other. Um, Getting back to anchors, actually, because I just realized I don't think I fully discovered that, or I mentioned that I'm using non-breaking spaces in anchors in ones that need spaces, and the same thing happens in links. But I want to change that, which I mentioned, by modifying the syntax to say that there can be inner white space, just not leading trailing white space. And that also is some syntax work. Once that's done, a lint action has to be made for finding non-breaking spaces and warning you if a file contains any of them. So I can make sure that I've cleaned up all remnants of them once they're no longer needed, which will also allow me to clean up some of the key bindings in the Hyperhelp authoring tools. And at the same time, a similar lint also needs to be written for tabs. Physical tab characters, that is. And the reason for that is for a little while, physical tab characters were used in the same way that non-breaking spaces are used now as an initial stab at just getting something working. And I didn't stick with that because it requires tab size to be set to 1 and for there to be no tabs anywhere in a file except inside anchors and links. I also have a nascent idea of a lint that just warns you if there are tabs in a file in general, because the holy war about whether or not a tab is 3 spaces, 4 spaces, or 8 spaces hasn't been won yet, and it's never going to be won. But I think it's important for helps files to maintain the consistency that the author intended them to have, and short of somehow encoding the tab size in the file so that it can reset the setting on the fly, I don't really see that happening. But I think we're going to start wrapping up this particular stream. There's roughly a minute left of code time, and it's been a long day. And I apologize if my energy level wasn't quite as high as it has been on this one, because it has been a long day, and I do feel like I'm coming down with some sort of mild cold or something. I've had a weird tickle in the back of my throat all day, but stream is still scheduled to occur this coming Sunday at 8 p.m. PST, where we will continue probably with some help uh, action on the existing some of those ideas I just talked about. Once I have a chance to think some more on how I think bookmarks should be implemented, should it be a menu, should it be a quick panel, should it be only available from the context menu, should it be available from the main menu, how do we want that to work, and where to store those? Because I do think that that's an important distinction as well. We can work on all of that stuff, and the timer is up, and it is late at night. So I'd like to thank you for coming along for this ride on this live stream, which is possibly the shortest one I've done at 2 hours and 16 minutes, because I didn't have a lot of boring blather at the beginning and at the end. At least I hope not. So we shall wrap this stream up, and I'd like to thank you for watching the video. Remember, you can subscribe to this channel or my other channel for Sublime Text videos. You can use the bell notification icon to be notified of when new videos become available. You can ask questions about anything Sublime Text related. It doesn't have to be the package I'm working on here. It can be any package development question that you have, some API you don't know what it does, or an idea you have you don't know how to implement. Drop a comment in the comment section on any of the videos on either of my channels, or send me a message at OdatNurd on Twitter, and we'll see if we can help you out. I don't know all topics. I can't uh, say for sure that I can definitely help you, but I'll certainly give it my best shot. And you're, of course, always invited to join the live stream chat and drop questions in there if you're so inclined to do so. But with all of that being said, this is OdatNurd, aka Terrence Martin, to those who are in the real world. Thanking you for watching the live stream, reminding you you can come back on Sunday at 8 p.m. PST for another one. And in the interim, remember to both stay sublime and have a sublime day.